Have you ever had one of those days, or maybe weeks, where you just can't seem to find rest? You know, that low-level hum of anxiety that just follows you around no matter what you do? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive into a Bible study from Dr. Bruce McClure to uncover the surprisingly deep roots of our daily anxieties and, hopefully, find a real path toward genuine peace.
So let's just jump right in with a question that really gets to the heart of it all. Picture this. You have two people in the exact same situation. Same house, same circumstances. So why is it that one of them can be completely stressed out and overwhelmed, while the other is totally calm and at peace? It's a puzzle, right? And it's one a lot of us are trying to solve in our own lives. To figure this out, our source material points us to a really famous story in the Bible, over in Luke chapter 10. It's a case study, really, of two sisters, Martha and Mary. And they give us this incredible window into how the anxious mind works. So here's the scene. Jesus is a guest in their home, and you can just feel the difference in the air between these two. Martha is described as being cumbered, which is just a fantastic word for being totally swamped and overwhelmed by all the tasks of hosting. She's all about the external stuff, but Mary? She's doing the complete opposite. She's just sitting, listening, and focusing on that internal connection. It's the same house, same guest, but two completely different worlds emotionally.
Okay, so Martha gets so frustrated that she actually complains to Jesus. She's like, "Can you please tell my sister to get up and help me?" But what Jesus does next is fascinating. He acts almost like a therapist. He completely sidesteps the external problem, the serving, and he goes way deeper, diagnosing Martha's internal state.
And his response is so telling. He doesn't take sides, he doesn't scold Mary, he just holds up a mirror to Martha. He says, "Martha, Martha, you are careful and troubled." He's basically pointing out that the problem isn't Mary, and it's not really the workload either. The problem is something happening inside of her.
And this is where we get to the core of it. The original Greek word used for troubled is turbazo, and it means to stir up, to agitate. It describes an internal commotion. So Jesus is essentially saying, Martha, there's a storm inside of you. There's this agitation that was there long before I showed up, and honestly, it has nothing to do with your sister.
And that's the crucial point, isn't it? Even if Mary had gotten up to help, it wouldn't have actually solved the real problem. Why? Because Jesus says Martha is troubled by many things. If it wasn't the dishes, it would have been something else. The root cause is this internal pattern of anxiety, not just one single thing that's happening on the outside.
So, that begs the question, where does a deep-seated internal commotion, like Martha's, actually come from? Well, Dr. McClure's lesson argues that for a lot of us, the seeds are planted long before we're adults, often stemming from unresolved trauma in our childhoods. Let's look at another case study, this one from the Old Testament. There's a man named Mephibosheth. When he was just 5 years old, his nurse dropped him while they were fleeing in a panic, and it left him disabled for the rest of his life. I mean, that is a deeply traumatic event for a little kid.
So, years and years later, King David finds him and wants to restore his family's honor, give him a place at the royal table. But listen to his response. Instead of being thrilled, he says, "Why would you even look upon such a dead dog as I am?" Wow. That childhood trauma shaped his self-image so profoundly that even in this incredible moment of blessing, all he could see was his own worthlessness.
Okay, our second case study is someone we usually think of as this powerful, unflappable leader, Moses. But if you look closely, his story also kicks off with some really deep trauma.
As a tiny baby, he was literally abandoned in a basket and pushed into a river to save his life. I mean, can you imagine? According to this teaching, the sheer terror of that experience came roaring back 80 years later when God called him to this incredibly high-stress mission. And suddenly, this great leader develops a stutter. He tells God, "I am not eloquent of speech." The anxiety from that ancient trauma showed up, physically.
And look, this isn't just a theory. These impacts are very, very real. Unresolved trauma can literally rewire our brains to always be expecting danger. It keeps us in that fight, flight, or freeze mode. And ultimately, as we see with Martha and Mephibosheth and Moses, this internal chaos almost always spills over and causes some serious problems in our relationships with other people. So, let's talk about the actual physiology for a minute. This internal commotion isn't just some vague feeling. It's something you can physically see in the wiring and the activity of our brains. And the data on this is just stunning. Studies show that people who experience childhood trauma aren't just a little more likely to have anxiety, they are 3 times more likely to develop anxiety disorders as adults. So the connection, it's not just a hunch, it's a clear, undeniable pattern. This really paints a picture of what's going on. A brain at rest kind of calmly scans the room and processes things one at a time. But an anxious brain, it's overactive. It's not that it can't pay attention, it's that it's trying to pay attention to everything all at once. It's just constantly firing, which is what leads to that feeling of being completely overwhelmed and, all over the map.
So how in the world do we even begin to see what's going on that deep inside of us? The writer of Hebrews has this amazing idea that God's Word can act like an MRI for the soul. It's designed to cut right through all that noise and reveal the true thoughts and intentions that are really driving our inner commotion.
And that brings us right back to our 2 sisters, Martha and Mary, and to the solution. If we recognize this internal commotion in ourselves, this Martha state of mind, how do we find our way back to peace?
Here is the key takeaway of the whole lesson. Jesus never ever tells Mary to get up and join Martha in her stressful frenzy. The goal is not to pull peaceful people down into our anxiety. The goal is for the anxious person to learn how to enter that state of rest.
So the path forward really seems to have 3 clear steps. First, we just have to be honest with ourselves and acknowledge that the commotion is real and it's inside us. Second, it really helps to try and understand where it came from, often looking into our past. And finally, and this is the hard part, we have to make a conscious choice, just like Mary did, to prioritize peace over all the many things that are vying for our attention. And that really leaves us with a final question to think about. As you go about your week, maybe ask yourself this. In what areas of my life am I being a Martha, caught up in a storm that's mostly of my own making? And what's just one small choice I can make today to be a little bit more like Mary, to choose that better part, which is peace?